like to say that we're the watchdog of the hotel industry and really the entire hospitality and tourism industry throughout the state of Georgia, here to ensure that only meaningful legislation is passed while onerous legislation does not materialize into law, while at the same time providing the necessary educational resources and opportunities for the members throughout the state of Georgia and the 500,000 employees that the hospitality and tourism industry employs throughout the state.
Welcome back to Brew Talks. I'm Steve Stroud, President and CEO of Roswell, Inc. We're the economic development organization in the city of Roswell.
I'm Andy Williams, President and CEO of Visit Roswell, the official destination marketing organization for the city of Roswell. And really ecstatic about the guest that we have on today, because our organization works very often with him on a number of different items. And he's a local Roswell resident. He's on our board of directors and is going to give some insights and some of the things we typically don't tackle on Roswell Brew Talks. And it's really all things related to the hotel industry, what the market looks like, different legislation that affects travel and tourism, and a number of different things. And so it's my pleasure to welcome from the Georgia Hotel and Lodging Association, their Director of Governmental Affairs, Chris Hardman. Welcome aboard.
Well, thank you, guys. I thought I was just here to hang out with the two of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you are, and drink some of our great coffee.
Exactly.
We appreciate it.
So GHLA, the Georgia Hotel and Lodging Association, is a subset or a chapter, if you want to call it, that spins off of the American Lodging Association, which is the national organization. So Chris specializes in really kind of what's going on here at home. And so Chris, we're going to walk it just way back to basics. And for the listeners and those viewers who really don't know what organizations like GHLA do, give us kind of the 101 on what you guys exist to do on a daily basis.
All right. Well, gosh, if you haven't heard of any association, in my opinion, any association, any trade association, no matter what it is, their first and foremost responsibility is to advocate on behalf of the industry in which they represent. So at GHLA, I like to say that we're the watchdog of the hotel industry and really the entire hospitality and tourism industry throughout the state of Georgia, here to ensure that only meaningful legislation is passed while onerous legislation does not materialize into law, while at the same time providing the necessary educational resources and opportunities for the members throughout the state of Georgia and the 500,000 employees that the hospitality and tourism industry employs throughout the state.
Which is strong, obviously,
Exactly.
here in Roswell. It's a big component, really, as you said, throughout the state. So how many members does the organization have?
So GHLA, we represent all 2,100 and whatever the new number is, hotels throughout the state of Georgia.
Okay.
I know you have several new products coming on board and several hotels throughout the state of Georgia. I'm really excited about that. Especially
we
the
are
one coming
too.
up right behind you here. But as the industry as a whole, if you think about it, there's a $80 billion economic impact to the state of Georgia.
Yeah.
I can't even tell you how big that is to the city of Roswell, where we are right now.
Mm-hmm.
But that impact is so strong that we've become the second largest economic driver in the state.
Yes.
Second largest private sector employer in the state. I think I mentioned this earlier, 500,000 employees in hospitality and tourism. It's just big business. I mean, you take one of the best examples I like to use for the benefit for the residents, for the community as a whole.
Sure.
If it wasn't for hospitality and tourism, each household would have to pay $1,500 in additional taxes to recoup for the taxes that would be lost without hospitality and tourism.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, when you take a look at Roswell's hotels, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but of the 13 hotels we have, one is truly full service, which means we're working with a number of limited service, and then we've got a few extended stays. But even with that product mix, we're still generating about $25 million in direct revenue on an annual basis. That does not factor in what that economic impact is. We can't necessarily track what every single visitor is going to be spending, but the direct revenue just based annually on what those room nights look like with those room rates is, it's pushing 25 million. Probably going to grow beyond that. Certainly will grow with the new product that's going to be coming online in the next couple of years. And then, you've got your short-term rentals. And this might be a good segue too, not to really sort of jump around, but Chris, you championed a particular bill that really kind of leveled the playing field with short-term rentals. Specifically, we know Airbnb, Vrbo get the lion's share of the product that's out there. Roswell specifically has about 227 currently active short-term rental listings. And for the longest times, those property owners, those businesses weren't paying into the lodging tax. Yep. Meanwhile, all of your bed and breakfast, your hotels, even campgrounds are paying into the lodging tax. And so you championed a piece of legislation that really, the model of that was actually set up more successful in Georgia compared to really what's been done around the country. Do you want to talk about that for a second, just to kind of enlighten the viewers?
Yeah, happy to. That was House Bill 317
Yep.
that we got passed a few years ago. I mean, that was, the benchmark for perfect legislation when you're trying to tackle an issue where there is an unlevel playing field within an industry. But we took a strategic approach to getting this legislation passed, and we weren't going to budge. We believed fully that the burden of tax collections and remittance should be on the platforms,
100%.
not the individual host, not
Right.
the owners of the short-term rental properties, not the residents of Roswell that own those short-term rental properties, but rather the platforms like Airbnb, like VRBO. Not only, one, does it benefit the owners, but two, it makes it a lot easier for the local governments to be able to collect those taxes that are legally owed because
Right.
they're offering lodging to
One
transient
source.
guests. One source. It simplifies things. But we didn't even realize how big it truly was until that legislation passed. You're looking at about an additional $150 million that are being brought in by short-term rentals alone in taxes.
Yeah.
And the hotel motel tax, the most important tax that our industry has to be able to go out and market that destination. I'm sure, Andy, you're going to talk quite a bit about that because I believe you're the benchmark on how you should market a destination.
Appreciate
You've done
it.
such a phenomenal job. And you're the benchmark for how you should develop a destination.
that's right. When we
Something
get
that
'em here.
residents can
That's right.
cherish.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, that was one of the pieces of legislation that I was probably the most proud of because it truly was the largest economic benefit for our industry since John Blackman created the hotel tax back in the early 70s.
Well, it was a lot of work, and I know you guys put a lot of work into it. And it's interesting. It's important to share this. Short-term rentals play a pivotal role when it comes to lodging, especially for things like special events, like citywide events. When you take into consideration men's Final Four, when you take into consideration these massive volleyball events that come downtown, Super Bowl. It's just been announced that we're getting a Super Bowl again. It goes beyond hotels. The hotels are important. Atlanta's got the Big Six.
Right.
They're adding product every day, it seems like, but there are still a lot of travelers who stay in short-term rentals.
That's right.
And now the cities around Atlanta, because we have what's called compression. When Atlanta sells out, they start spawning out elsewhere. Roswell directly
burbs.
benefits from that. So that piece of legislation was huge. And I want to go back because we've jumped ahead a little bit. Chris, you, of anybody in the state of Georgia, probably come from the most hospitality-focused family there is. Your granddad
That is the truth.
started Southeast Tourism Society. Your dad ran that for a number of years.
And served on our board, by the way.
On our executive committee. Chris, you've been with the Georgia Restaurant Association. Now you're in the hotel sector. Give us your background as far as, I don't think you had a choice of whether or not you could get involved in travel and tours. I think that was pretty much
It was in his
determined for you.
blood.
But talk us through how you kind of have climbed the ladder and gotten involved.
Yeah, happy to. There's no better industry than this.
Right.
It's
and
fun every day.
Exactly. We just get paid to have fun, right?
Yeah.
But I grew up in a household of hospitality professionals, obviously tourism professionals, but also politics.
Yeah.
So being able to bridge that gap between politics as well as hospitality and make a difference on the 500,000 hospitality employees here in the state of Georgia. That is meaningful to me.
Makes
and it's
a
something
huge
that
difference.
I enjoy. But growing up, again, in my dad's shoes, he's one popular guy.
Yeah,
he is.
He's a great guy.
I go to anywhere in the nation I go, I'll go to a conference and I might introduce myself. I won't be wearing a name badge. I'll say, hey, I'm Chris.
Yeah.
Somebody might say a few words, but then they'll walk away. If I'm wearing a name badge, I say, hey, I'm Chris. They say, wait, Hardman? Are you Bill Hardman's son?
Yeah.
They'll stay with me for an hour and talk. So,
Yeah.
he's
That's
definitely
right.
made a difference in this industry.
Yes.
So I
It
appreciate
did,
it.
absolutely. Well, and again, you're right about the fact that it is a great industry. We've heard this for years, but the mantra is truly tourism is economic development, and economic development is tourism, and they go hand in hand. And,
Absolutely.
once you realize that is so important to recognize that, it's an easier sell for the residents and, truly for the legislators to
Oh, absolutely.
understand. Because if we can drive dollars both ways, and hospitality is really what the South has, right? in a big way.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we do that well in Roswell, and we brag about it, right?
It's in the name, Southern Hospitality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about maybe some patterns, some trends, what you guys are seeing on the horizon. I mean, we all know that Georgia's constantly ranked, one of the best state, actually the best state for business.
Yep.
We do a really good job of recruiting, whether it's manufacturing, data centers, helping small business to expand. But with that also, we oftentimes say that tourism is the first date, when a company's choosing to relocate or expand or considering, what their options are.
It is.
And so with the travel industry, Chris, I want to talk about maybe some patterns that you guys are seeing as far as business. Are we looking positive as far as occupancy? Are we looking positive as far as growth in rate, RevPAR, which is revenue per available room? What are you seeing statewide, with the next couple of years?
All right. So to back up a little bit, I mean, we talk about the state of Georgia being the number one state for doing business. We need to be the number one state as a tourism driver and a tourism marketer. We're not right now, so that's something we're going to have to change in the upcoming legislative session. If not this year, in the second year of the two-part biennial legislative session.
Sure.
But you go back during the COVID times, our governor, we're grateful to Governor Kemp for us being one of the first states to open.
Made a difference.
And the last state to close. I mean, it truly did make a difference for our industry. That meant we were the first state to be able to go out and recruit visitors to come back to the state of Georgia, to support our industry, to support the small businesses, the restaurants, the travel operators, the hotels, to come back and keep us afloat. That helped us out a lot. Now, we've had record-breaking years over the past few years, and really going back over the past 7-8 years, as an industry as a whole for the state. Next year, I see it, most of the forecasts that I see for the hotel industry specifically, it remains flat, which is good.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
In 2026, we're looking for another big jump.
Okay.
You look at the World Cup that's coming into town.
That's right.
I mean, you have the national championship next year, but then in following years, we're guaranteed at least one playoff game or a semifinal game every year when it comes to college football. You were talking about sports earlier, and I know you're a sports guy. So,
Yes.
but we have a lot of big events that are going to trickle down and around the Atlanta metro area,
Right.
especially when you look at the World Cup.
Yeah. Well, and shout out to our friends down a little bit further south to us at the Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureaus. They are a big part of working on those bids to go after those types of events and really to market the metro Atlanta area as a whole as an appealing destination for a lot of those big sporting events. And so it is big business. It's big business. And what's great about it is the city never looks better than when those sporting events come, because people really roll up their sleeves and clean up. And it's a good thing to be a part of. And like I said earlier, we really benefit from that. So Chris, talk to us too. What do you think as far as legislation is concerned in this next session? It's coming down the pike. What do you think some of the hot topics you're going to be addressing might be?
All right. Well, gosh, no
Pressure.
No pressure. Well, this is my favorite topic to talk about.
There you go.
Is legislation. We're going to be pushing quite a bit again next year. We had some extremely successful pieces of legislation that passed over the past couple of years since House Bill 317 passed.
Yeah, sure.
But next year, our focus is going to be on tort and insurance reform.
Okay.
That's essential for every business, no
100%.
matter whether or not you're in hospitality and tourism.
Yep.
Every business in the city of Roswell is suffering from the higher insurance costs
That's right.
that are going on. You're looking at about a 25% increase in insurance premiums since last year alone. I mean, look at your car insurance alone.
insurance.
Auto insurance increased 25% since last year. That's incredible. So we need to address that. The governor has hosted, I believe, 4 roundtable discussions on tort reform to see what they can do. This past legislative session, there was legislation passed that required the Department of Insurance Commissioner to study the impact that tort laws have on insurance costs, both residential as well as commercial. So hopefully we'll be able to take those numbers that actually come out this week, apply them to some meaningful legislation next year, and we can address the much needed and harmful tort laws that the state of Georgia currently has right now.
Got it.
That's one of our bigger ones, and we're a part of a coalition with just about every other business out there. We're also going to be looking at human trafficking prevention.
Yeah.
That's something that our industry has made a priority over the past well, really since our existence, but the past 5 years we've been vocal about it. We offer free training. I believe we've trained over 1 million employees over the past, 4 years, which is remarkable. But this past legislative session, just to get the topic of discussion started, we introduced legislation that would have required hotels to provide human trafficking prevention trainings to all of their guest-facing employees. We were going to put a mandate on our own industry.
Yeah.
We thought it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It needs to happen. Just one life saved is worth this legislation.
Agreed.
That ultimately failed to make it across the finish line on Sine Die last year, so we're hopeful that that's going to be brought back. Actually, two of the author as well as the House sponsor are both touching the city of Roswell, and Senator Sean Still as well as Representative Deborah Silcox, who had one of the most expensive legislative races this year and came out as a victor. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to bring that back next year and truly affect meaningful change when it comes to human trafficking prevention here in the state of Georgia.
Well, I love that too, and I love that you guys are just addressing that head on. I feel like a number of other organizations might shy away from something like that because it's a blemish, but at the end of the day, look, facts are facts, and if you know these types of things are happening within hotels, well, then let's fix that. And, our very own Roswell Rotary Club and Dave McCleary are very involved in, ending human trafficking and at the statewide and the national level. And so,
we've
Chris,
got
with
the
you as a Roswell
entryway,
resident too, it's fantastic.
With Hartsfield, it's an entry.
Oh, absolutely.
And,
it is.
And an
Busiest
exit,
airport in the
and we
nation- in
don't
the
need
world.
it to happen. So if we can, and again, being business friendly for 10 consecutive years, one of the most business friendly states in the nation, we got to stay that way, and we've got to be sure we secure what we do and who we are as a citizenry. I mean, it's just too important.
Couldn't agree more.
What you do is key, and I think people forget. Sometimes they say, you belong to an association, so are they just lobbying for their efforts? To make things better for your industry. And, I was a printer for 30 plus years and was a member of the Printing Association of Georgia. We're now members of the IEDC, which is the International Economic Development Council. All of these organizations help better the community, obviously the business side of it, which is really important, but it makes it better for the citizens.
Yeah. Well, and, GHLA is really good about partnership too. And, whether that's partnering with the Southeast Tourism Society, with the Georgia Association of Convention and Visitors Bureaus. Awesome. I'm sure you guys are partners with, others, GRA, Georgia Restaurant Association as well. But bringing all those together, there's power in numbers. And when you bring a lot of experienced people, smart people in the room, you can get a lot done. And so we appreciate everything you do, Chris. And, as we wrap up here, we'll kind of leave it open-ended. Is there anything that you would like our audience, our listeners to know about anything you got cooking or kind of, the industry as a whole that people might not know? Kind of your time to give us a minute or so of just open thoughts.
Well, I would say that this industry is the best industry there is. Please go out, stay in hotels, eat at restaurants, visit the shops. I mean, what you have done for the city of Roswell is truly remarkable. Again, you both are benchmarks on what you should be doing nationally.
Appreciate that.
And I thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to the product that's going to be opening up over the next couple of years
Same here.
so that we can
We
continue
do
to
too.
invest in tourism and development here in the city of Roswell. So I appreciate it.
Perfect.
Exciting times.
Chris Hardman,
Exactly.
Georgia Hotel and Lodging Association. We'll end it with your favorite saying.
It's always a great day to do business in Roswell.
Always a great
Let's
day.
do some more.
Visit, stay, and play.
That's it. Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers.